We're not here to compare ourselves to others. We're here to compare our own daily actions to what's truly highest in our own values. I ask people sometimes in conferences, how many of you would like to be, financially independent? Everybody puts their hands up. And I said, now what would you do? You got 1 minute to write down what you would do if you got 10 million pounds right now. What would you do? And most people who say they want to be financially independent immediately spent between 20 and 80% of that money in 1 minute with decisions to buy consumables that depreciate in values to make them feel better about themselves through other people's brands at overpriced. And as a result of it, they think they want to be financially independent, but they're actually wanting the lifestyles of the rich and famous that they're subordinating to that they admire. So it's not about how much you make, it's how you manage what you make, and the hierarchy of your values is dictating how you manage it.
It's never about the money, right? It's never about the balance sheet and the income statement. Is it always about the mentality?
I always say searching for money without meaning leads to debauchery. If you're infatuated with it, you'll fear its loss. If you're resenting it, you're going to fear its gain. If you love it, you've transcended it, and you realize what you can do with it, and you see it as a measuring mechanism of the contribution you can do that inspires you, that makes a difference in others. So if you're going to be a leader, you need to get authentic, because it spontaneously comes out of you on what you want to do.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Dr. John Demartini is a fascinating man. For the past 50 years, he's traveled to over 155 countries and taught over 1,000 of his breakthrough experiences. And this is a way of trying to get you aligned to your mission in life. What is your authentic self? What makes you most congruent? And most of us spend our whole lives never really knowing that. We get a job because that's what society tells us what to do. We go to college because our parents want us to do that. We buy a car because it impresses our friends, and we never really get aligned to why we're here on this planet. And I believe that's such a shame, and that creates so much waste in this world. And John Demartini has devoted his life to try to help people figure this out, and he does this in his breakthrough experience. He's also really famous for his conflict resolution, getting people that are at juggernauts with each other to find a way to find some common ground. And he had some great tips and stories about how he does that. And the other thing he's really good is about grieving for a loss. We've all lost people in our lives, and within hours, he can find a way to where you no longer feel pain and loss. You actually feel a sense of honor and love that that person has passed. It's just an incredible way of looking at the world, looking at love, looking at the relationships around us. He's lived this incredible life. He's actually owns a boat that just continually travels around the world. He's constantly traveling, and I was just so impressed by how genuine he was. He got emotional. He lived a crazy life as a kid where he hitchhiked to Mexico City, went to Hawaii, did psychedelics, did surfing, and finally found his mission, battled through a learning disorder, memorized the dictionary, and went on to do such incredible things. And I know this episode is going to blow you away. I think this will be one of the top 10 guests on London Real history. So find some time right now, get comfortable, and enjoy this incredible message from Dr. John Demartini.
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Dr. John Demartini, the human behavior specialist, educator, and author. You've studied over 30,000 books across every academic domain, including philosophy, theology, neurology, and physiology, to create the Demartini Method, a detailed understanding of the universal laws of human awareness, social dynamics, and leadership. You're best known for your breakthrough experience, a life solution seminar that has been taught in over 155 countries, helping to solve personal challenges, build relationships, clarify purpose, and achieve goals. John, welcome to London Real.
Thank you for having me.
It's great having you here. Before we get started, I'm just curious, what is it like when you come to London? What does this city remind you of? You've probably been coming here for quite some time, but how is it different than the other 155 places you've been around the world?
It's one of the great cities of the world. It's alive, it's buzzing, it's multicultural, it's creative, it's innovative, it's transformational. You come here and it's almost, I was talking to somebody yesterday and they said, well, I came here many years ago, 15 years ago, and I went back to the same location and I didn't recognize anything. It was completely transformed. So it's a transformative city.
And you lived in New York City for quite some time.
Yes.
How does it compare to New York? Like, what do you see that's similar and different?
Well, New York has, kind of straight streets and it's kind of cubical. And here, I don't know if there is a straight street. I think it goes everywhere.
Yeah.
But I think it's more of a creative city design. And I think New York has creativity and it's got a lot of energy too, without a doubt. But New York, I think as you know, it's a new city and it was structured differently. Here you have the original pathways. I think probably the pathways, some of these streets were probably part animal paths or something when they did it, because there's just, there's the rhyme and reason is different.
Yeah, it's interesting to be in a city that has history for thousands of years.
Oh yeah.
You kind of feel it. Sometimes you can't put your finger on it, like you said. But
Well,
it's
when
there.
you come here and you see buildings that are 1700, 16, you go back, it's pretty inspiring too.
Yeah, and like you said, the roads and pathways are ancient. Just like you said.
Yeah, anybody I think you need a PhD to get be a taxi driver here or an Uber driver here, because just locating it, even though they have the electronic ways of doing it, some of these taxi guys know all the streets.
Yeah,
it's hard to comprehend.
They have this thing called the knowledge, which used to take 3 or 4 years to memorize all the streets. And I think, you're a neurologist. I think they did some studies and found that actually, like, both hemispheres of the brain became somehow more physically linked after you did the knowledge. I mean, there was a lot going on.
I could believe it, because the integration. There's that one painter that you could fly over the city and he could recreate the city, and you wonder how a massive amount of information they're able to store in one vision. But it's definitely a unique city, and taxi drivers are drivers when they know how to do it, and they tell you stories. When you go here, the drivers tell you stories of things that are pretty inspiring.
Yeah, the taxi drivers hate the mobile phone because they're used to having conversations, and now people are on their phones. But back in the day when I got here, man, they would talk your ear off about everything happening, history, everything. So
yeah, they'll tell you things on who lived there, and it's quite fun.
Yeah, no, definitely, for sure. Well, look, it's great to have you on. As I was telling you before we started, people have been asking for you for years to come on, so I'm so glad you're here, because you've been doing your stuff for so long. In some ways, you're one of the originals at going out there and teaching a lot of these ideas that empower people. And so I'd love to go into your history and a lot of the things that you talk about. First, tonight, I was noticing that you're actually teaching, I think, a seminar about gratitude.
Yes.
And one of the things we did this morning, I just got back from New York yesterday, but every Monday morning, before we do anything here, everyone gets in a circle and we all say something we're grateful for. Now, in the beginning, a lot of my new employees thought we were a bunch of weirdos. And let's be honest, we are weird here. But it's something we do every morning, and people actually start really enjoying it. And we go around and just say something we're grateful for. We also say an affirmation. But it's just a great way for people to get perspective and to go around the group. Also, when I was in New York City, I interviewed a guy named Wes Watson, who spent 10 years in the California State Penitentiary. And he has a phrase that says, life is one big gratitude test. And he says that whenever you should always realize that life is happening for you, not to you. And this is a guy that's had a hard past. And so that's his look on gratitude. And I was wondering how you look at gratitude, because I know you talk about false gratitude and true gratitude, and you've been teaching this for a long time. And I was wondering if you could share some of your ideas and how you came up with them.
Well, first of all, I was born on Thanksgiving Day. So that probably had something to do with it. And when I was 4 years old, my mom was putting me to bed, and she said, make sure you count your blessings before you go to bed and think about what you're grateful for, because if those that are grateful for things, they get more to be grateful for. And so that was kind of implanted in my thinking very young. But I really didn't formally focus on gratitude until a bit later. And then I started accumulating on a daily basis, starting around 17, 18, on documenting what I was blessed by that each day. And I called it Had the Opportunity to da-da-da. And I've got now 25 volumes of that. And it's probably there's over 5,000 pages of just gratitudes, 10-point print, 1-inch margins of daily gratitudes that I keep. Wow. And I'm a firm believer that when you do that, when you're really balanced and you're centered, you are grateful. You know, if we look up to somebody and we infatuate with them and we minimize ourselves, we're not being authentic and we're not seeing them as they are. And when we look down on people, we exaggerate ourselves and minimize them, and neither are authentic. But when we actually look across with a reflective awareness, with some equity, and our heart opens, we realize that they're worthy of love. Nobody's worth putting on pedestals or pits, but everybody's worth putting in hearts. And when that state's there, it's just you're resonant, if you will, and you end up having more, sustainable, fair exchanges and transactions that start building momentum and they expand opportunity. So I'm a firm believer that if you document your gratitudes, it definitely adds to the opportunities and the contribution in life and the reciprocation that you get back. So I'm a firm believer of that because I've seen the results of it, and I got it all documented, and it's really amazing what happens when I always say gratitude is the key that opens up the gateway of the heart, and inside the heart's love. And love window washes the mind as it radiates out. And that brings an enthusiasm to the body and more certainty and presence to our own existence. And then we end up having opportunities that magnetizes, and the synchronicities of people, places, things, ideas, and events into our life that synchronize with what our innermost dominant thought is. We create things that are very fulfilling.
Wow, so it all starts with gratitude.
Yeah, I think that gratitude is a great door opener for our existence.
And for when you meet people that just have a hard time getting in touch with gratitude, or people that don't know how to practice it, like, what do you tell them? How do you kickstart that off?
Well, there's 15 delusions that I find that leads to people that shut off their gratitude. They have expectations on people to be one-sided. If I went up to somebody and I said, and just anybody, I just walked up to them and I said, you're always kind, never cruel, always up, never down, always positive, never negative, always peaceful, never wrathful, always considerate, never inconsiderate, always generous, never stingy, always giving, never taking. Would you believe me? They'd go, not really. Because they immediately, intuitively, like a thermostat, think of the sides when they were not that way. If I said you're always down, you're never up, you're always negative, you're never positive, you're always taking, never giving, always stingy, never generous, always inconsiderate, never considerate, always wrathful, never peaceful, always negative, never positive, they would have the same thing, but they would think of their upsides. If I said sometimes they're kind, sometimes they're cruel, sometimes they're nice, sometimes they're mean, sometimes they're positive, sometimes they're mad, they go, yes. They'd have a sense for that balanced state that they have both. But whenever they are putting an expectation on themselves or others to be one-sided, they set themselves up for unrealistic expectations that are unobtainable or sustainable. And as a result of it, they end up in gratitude because they have the anger. I call it the ABCDFGHs of negativity: anger and aggression, blame and feelings of betrayal, criticisms and challenges, despair and depression, the desire to exit and escape, frustration, futility, grouchiness and grief, and hatred and hurt. And we create those as a result of an unrealistic expectation that we project on others or on ourselves to be one-sided. Or if we expect that individual to live in our values, or expect ourselves to live in somebody else's values and not be authentic to ourselves, we set ourselves up that undermine the gratitude attitude. And we also do that on objects. We could do that on an ATM machine or a computer. I've seen people get really angry at a computer and call it stupid, and I'm starting to think maybe they're reflecting on something.
Right.
But we put unrealistic expectations out there, and it erodes the natural yearning to want to express thank you.
And I remember you talking before that a lot of us start off blaming others, and then we blame ourselves, and then hopefully we get to an evolution where
There's nothing to blame.
there's nothing to blame.
Yeah.
Is that a process sometimes as we grow up? You know, is that, or how does that work?
I believe it was Epictetus. Epictetus was the philosopher that first put that together, that term. And Most people want to be victims of their history instead of masters of their destiny at first. They want to look at an external source. And as a result of it, they blame these things outside themselves. Then they blame themselves because they have this injected value system of mothers, fathers, preachers, teachers, conventions, traditions that they're comparing their life to, and they think, oh, they're making a mistake. And eventually they realize, no, there's a transcendent awareness, as Kohlberg describes, where you realize it wasn't either of those. There's just something to be grateful for. And I think that that's a liberating state that not everybody attains on a consistent basis by any means, but they certainly have a yearning innately, a calling to transcend the judgments, the lower moralities of punishment rewards that they get themselves into. Anytime you expect yourself to live in somebody else's values, you're going to beat yourself up. Anytime you expect them to live in your values, you're going to be, they're going to be beaten up. But if you start to realize that you live in your own values, Einstein said it, if you're a cat and you're expecting to swim like a fish, you're going to beat yourself up. You're not going to appreciate yourself. Or if you're a fish expecting to climb like a cat, you're going to beat yourself up. But if you honor yourself as who you are, according to what you truly value, and live honorably by priority according to what's authentic to you, you build momentum doing extraordinary things and exemplify what's possible for other human beings. That magnetizes opportunity and creates a leadership role that inspires.
I keep thinking of that term, stay in your lane. I've had people say, there's a great hip hop artist named Ice-T, and he said, if you go to the gym, you can always find someone who's lifting more weight than you. You can always find someone that's richer than you. And he always says, stay in your own lane. Focus on what you do, what you can do best, what you can control, how you can lead. But we live in a world today where we're bombarded with images of everyone that's maybe doing things better than us, and yet it doesn't show their value systems along with it. I don't know, is any of these ideas making sense to you?
Yes, it's crucial because we're not here to compare ourselves to others. We're here to compare our own daily actions to what's truly highest in our own values. If we do that, we will expand ourselves. Every individual has a set of priorities that they live their life by moment, even though that list is evolving. At any moment, that's there. And every perception, every decision, and every action they take is based on that. And they're always making a decision based on what they believe will give them the greatest advantage over disadvantage. And if they live by highest priorities, the blood glucose and oxygen goes into the forebrain and awakens the executive center where they have the most self-governance. They have inspired visions, strategic planning, executing plans, and they literally have fibers that go all the way down into the amygdala with GABA and glutamate that they shut down the impulse and instinct animal center that distract them from really an inspired focus. But when they live by highest priority and they're more objective, they set real goals in real time that get real actions, that get results. But the second they are not doing that and comparing themselves to somebody else and putting them on a pedestal, they'll inject the values of others into their life and attempt to be like somebody else. And Emerson said, envy is ignorance and imitation is suicide. We're not here to compare ourselves, we're here to honor ourselves and not live in their shadows, but stand on their shoulders. So the second we do that, we cloud the clarity of our own mission and calling in life. And then as a result of it, have unfulfillment, which then puts the glucose and blood down into the amygdala and makes us want to avoid the challenges and seek the easy life. And we go towards impulsive, compulsive, immediate gratifying, addictive behaviors as a compensation for unfulfilled highest values. So we, in a sense, disempower ourselves and get into polarities and ungoverned external influence instead of an inspired calling from within to do something amazing. So it's important to live by priority on a daily basis.
Right, and we've all been inspired. We've all had that moment where we're just inspired or, with some great, higher purpose of a goal, whether that means raising a child or building a church or building a science fair project or working on a Lego set, right? Where you kind of transcend everything and you don't succumb to all these other lower desires. We've all been there, but a lot of us aren't there on a regular basis, right? Some would even argue the education system was designed to not get us there.
Yeah, they were making drones, not crowns.
Right.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that if you don't fill your day with high priority actions that truly inspire you, your day is designed to fill up with low priority distractions that don't. And the symptomatology that emerges in all areas of life, not just physiologically, as a result of that, is a feedback system to let you know you're not being authentic. And a lot of times people are trying to get rid of some parts of themselves instead of honor what it's trying to do to get them to be themselves. And the moment they sit and get focused on what's really priority and give themselves permission to say no to the other things or even delegate those things to people who would be inspired to do that and liberate themselves from those emotional states, they get on with an inspired, grateful, loving, and very present state of a great accomplishment. They're the excellers.
And so say, for example, I'm going to work every day doing something that doesn't fulfill me, that doesn't inspire me. Then I'm coming home at night and I'm getting into, addictions like Netflix and drinking and binge eating. Are you saying those are feedback loops to show me how much I don't like doing that and how my life is missing something?
Yes.
And if we listen to that, we can get back on track.
Addictive, impulsive, compulsive, immediate gratifying behaviors, which could be searching for sugar, it could be consuming food, it could be coffees and teas, and anything that's a stimulant to compensate for the unfulfillment is literally a compensation for not living according to what we value most. Anytime we're not living by our highest values, we create homeostatic feedback systems to get us back to it. Our brain itself is actually a highest value seeking and fulfilling organ. It's designed to do that. So many of the symptomatologies that we actually think are problems are actually nothing more than feedback systems, if interpreted wisely, to get us back into authenticity. I really believe that our physiology, our psychology, our sociology, and even our existential world is actually offering us feedback. And that's why, as your friend said, it's all on the way, never in the way. And the wise individual, they found in 2013 in a science study, they found that when an individual is living by priority, they actually don't perceive failure, they see feedback. When a person's not living by priority and they're living in lower values, they get addicted to one side and the other side feels like failure. There's a thing called eustress and distress. And eustress is wellness promoting and distress is illness promoting. When you live by your highest values, because you embrace both sides of life and you're more objective, you are resilient and adaptable, and you don't get highly polarized in your emotions, and you see things on the way as feedback. But when you're not fulfilling your highest value, you're trying to live in other people's values, envying and imitating, you automatically, because of the unfulfillment, want to avoid pain, avoid predator, and seek prey like an animal. When you do, you're setting up a fantasy of one-sidedness, and when life smacks you with the other side, because life has two sides, you're trying to avoid it, and it's now distress. The same thing is now distress instead of eustress. It's like a young boy who loves video games. When he's really inspired about the video games, he's going to conquer the game he's got, and he's going to go on to pursue a greater and more challenging game. And he's going to manipulate his parents to figure out how to get that game. And then he's going to pursue it, and the second he conquers that, he's going to want to pursue a greater game. So when people live authentically and congruently according to what they value most, they pursue challenges that inspire them, which emerges as leadership. But if they don't, and they're sitting and conforming instead of enorming, they automatically inject the values of others, cloud themselves, they're unfulfilled, and then they look for immediate gratification and keep getting smacked by distressing situations, and they think the world's against them instead of in favor of their fulfillment.
Right. And then they come to you to help them sort that out? Or, because that's the thing, I mean, if that really worked effectively, how come so many people might take a lifetime to figure out that that's happening to them? Or is that all part of the process?
Paul Dirac, the Nobel Prize winner, said that it's not that we don't know so much, we know so much that isn't so. And so what we're doing is bombarded by mothers and fathers and preachers and teachers and traditions and conventions and mores that may be set up originally in different stages of levels of awareness in a way that's actually suppressing. And like I say, you go to school, no one's been taught how to be a multimillionaire or a billionaire. Nobody's taught how to be a great leader in the school systems, mainly for drones. I don't mean to be too, negating of it, but a lot of them are basically set up just to go get in debt under the banking system and go and get yourself work in a safe, secure environment. It's more of a survival security game instead of a thrival and self-actualization game. And so as a result of it, we're bombarded by so much that isn't mastery. And as a result of it, we think that's what's reality. And we can transform it and transcend it if we ask the right questions, because the quality of our life is based on the quality of questions we ask. And the ones that bring us back into equanimity and equity and authenticity liberates us from the mediocrity and gives rise to something profound in our calling to do something that's humanitarian.
Right. And yet the whole system is stacked against us to a certain extent. So the education system was created by us lovely Victorians here in England, I think, to create factory workers.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's happening. Then you've got the whole, media, industry that kind of wants you to consume. And then
they have to use sensationalisms of high polarity in order to keep your attention.
Right. And
now you're not, an individual who's on a mission is not easily distracted because they're fulfilling their highest values. But so many people, I ask people sometimes in conferences, how many of you would like to be, financially independent? Everybody puts their hands up. And I actually did this little exercise one time. I had about 6,000 people. And I said, I want everybody to pull out a piece of paper, and I want you to imagine I just gave you 10 million pounds, right? And you have enough money to where you could live decently. And I said, now what would you do? You got 1 minute to write down what you would do if you got 10 million pounds right now. What would you do? And they go, on your mark, get set, go. And they wrote it all down, 10 things they would do if they had 10 million pounds. And then I said, now hand it to the person next to him, and let's calculate how much you have remaining left from your 10 million pounds. And most people who say they want to be financially independent immediately spent between 20 and 80% of that money in 1 minute with decisions to buy consumables that depreciate in values to make them feel better about themselves through other people's brands that are overpriced, instead of building their own brand and buying assets that accumulated and allow them to work passively on their behalf. And as a result of it, they think they want to be financially independent, but they're actually wanting the lifestyles of the rich and famous that they're subordinating to, that they admire.
That's a powerful exercise. So by nature, they're not dependent. Their behavior pattern just shows by that exercise that they will never be dependent with that mentality.
Independent financially.
Independent financially.
No, the hierarchy of your values dictates your financial destiny. So tell me what your hierarchy of values are, and that's how your money is going to be spent. So if you have a higher value on Jimmy Choo shoes than you actually buy in stocks and real estate holdings, then you're going to keep buying the shoes and you're never going to get around. You'll have more money month at the end of your money than money at the end of your month. So it's not about how much you make, it's how you manage what you make, and the hierarchy of your values is dictating how you manage it. So I can tell by doing a value determination and look at how their values are, where they're headed, because it's determining their financial and their regular destiny. And if I know what that is, unless we have a shift in values, we won't have a shift in life.
And when you talk to people about being financially independent and creating money and wealth and businesses, it's never about the money, right? It's never about the balance sheet and the income statement. Is it always about the mentality?
It depends on the individual reasons for doing it, but the people I know, I always say searching for money without meaning leads to debauchery. But searching for wealth building with meaning and purpose in life that does something that serves leads to philanthropy. And I find that the people who are actually have meaning when they get financially independent, they don't stop. They keep doing something that's meaningful, that contributes to the planet on an ever-expanding scale. In the Book of Wealth by Hubert Hall Bancroft, 1895, when that book was published, is handed out to 400 of the most wealthy people on the planet. And it said there were 3 things common to wealthy people. One is that they felt by divine providence and human sovereignty that the individuals that were wealthy felt, in a sense, called or destined to serve vast numbers of people. And they were literally thinking, how can we make a contribution to the greatest number of people with resources we have today most efficiently? They also felt like they were there not to accumulate things just for the sake of pride, but to accumulate things to invest in the highest standards, which would literally move the economy up to standards instead of mediocrity. And they did that because it would raise the standards of everybody's jobs upward. And then they also had transcended the idea of a good and evil perspective. It was neither good nor evil. It was just a means of measuring the contribution of sustainable fair exchange and transactions that impacted a ripple effect into society. And that state of mind was a different state of mind than I got to get my first millions, and they're focused on the kind of a short-term immediate gratification system.
Right, wow. So kind of like a higher purpose, giving value to a lot of different people. And then that last one is not one I would expect. There's not the good and evil, the good and bad.
Yeah, well, anything that you infatuate with occupies space and time in your mind and runs you. Right. Anything that you resent occupies space and time in your mind and runs you. Anybody who's tried to go to sleep with an infatuation on their mind, it's hard to sleep. Or resentment on their mind, it's hard to sleep. Because it occupies space and time in your mind and creates electronic and molecular imbalances in the brain, trying to find balance at night. And so anytime you have those imbalances, it runs you. So if your money is seen as evil or seen as good, you got the fear and the greed kind of thing. And as Warren Buffett says, until you can manage emotions, don't expect to manage money. When you transcend that and see neither attachment on it and have no fear of loss or no fear of the gain, if you're infatuated with it, you'll fear its loss. If you're resenting it, you're going to fear its gain. If you love it, you've transcended it, and you realize what you can do with it, and you see it as a measuring mechanism of the contribution you can do that inspires you, that makes a difference in others.
Yeah, wow. But how can you actually change that mentality with people? Does it take a lot of time?
No, I don't think so. I think what it is when people start to live congruently according to what they value most, what happens is they increase their achievement, they increase their self-worth, they end up walking their talk, they end up expanding their space and time horizons, they end up going after things that are greater and more expansive, they realize that they're capable and confident, they realize that the people around them reflect a part of them, and if I contribute to them and help them get what they want, I get more of what I want. And they put an equity position in there instead of a narcissism or altruism position. And as a result of it, they keep pursuing and expanding ever greater challenges of contribution, because the challenges of contribution in the world is whatever the biggest problems are on the planet, how can I be of contribution and serve that? Those individuals end up with fortunes. Those individuals use resources effectively and competitively in a way that is actually serving and giving the most job opportunities. I was working with a lovely lady I was just mentioning that picked up and got a good mining find. And her whole objective finding that wasn't about getting a mine or doing getting wealthy. Her whole objective was, how many jobs can I create in my country? And she found that one of the biggest finds because of it. And that's the difference. An individual that resonates with something that's more universal and sustainable ends up in the universe rewarded in ways that we can't always see. So we have to transcend that immediate gratification and have a long-term vision if we want to get the greatness out of ourselves.
And when you look at the greats in history and the people that have created vast amounts of wealth, they almost always are those types of people.
Yeah, I found 6 things common to them. And I tell people, and if you don't have these on your value list, they could be put on your value list by stacking up enough associations and benefits. But they have a desire to serve vast numbers of people and build a business that serves vast number of people. Some of the wealthiest billionaires, if you look at them, that's a common thread to them. They also have a desire to manage in the business in such a way, effectively and efficiently, to its maximizing profits. Not because they want to just get the money, but also because that allows them to share more with their employees and also get a better price that's competitive in the marketplace. So the efficiency of Parkinson's law and Ricardo's principles allow that to be more efficient. Then they go on to the next thing, they realize that they save a portion, an ever progressive portion of the profits, so they have a liquid reserve, so they're not emotionally unstable and making decisions out of impulse and instinct, but out of strategy. And they save enough to keep a cash reserve. Some of the Fortune 100 companies have at least a 40% total gross income that year in cash reserves, not because they just want to hold it like that, but they know that it stabilizes them and keeps them objective.
Apple does this.
Yeah, they keep it 40 to 100%. Microsoft kept 100% in some cases. And then they go in and invest in ever greater degrees of leverage. So they learn the mastery and stair-stepping it. And they don't go in impulsively, gambling away. They go in there methodically, using their mathematics to their advantage to invest in things that are ancillary things that will allow the greatest growth and contribution. And then they accumulate the fortune, not because they need it for their ego, but because if they do, they attract more opportunity because money flows where it goes. And then they end up finding a legacy, creating a financial cause that leaves a legacy that contributes back, creative capitalism, as we could call it, and making sure it goes back, because eventually it's going to come from people and it's going to go back to people in the cycles of life.
Right. So they're active about that.
They're active about it.
Is that like, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett giving it back to charity and being
Well, they created creative capitalism because of it. And they realized that if they try to hoard it into a monopoly, into a thing, it causes challenges in society. And in order to do that, it stops their own growth. So they realized that nature forces, it's called, one of the most ancient laws there is the law of the one to many. I just wrote about an article for Jet Set magazine on that. And it says that when you're dating the many, right, you're looking for the special one. And then when you got the one, you're wondering about the many. It's just the law of the one and many. The same thing in monarchies and democracies and social structure or any other field. In 299 disciplines that I've studied, I found this law applied. This law is the most universal law and it applies to money. So if you try to hoard it into one source like that, nature forces you to redistribute it back into the many to do something that serves. And at the same time it disperses there, somebody rises out of it to reconcentrate it. So nature's constantly keeping that regulated. And if it's unregulated to one pole or the other, you get revolutions. Well, once you get those things back in balance, you actually get evolutions.
Right. Hence the inheritance tax. That's the way of distributing that money.
The economist is different than the financial. The financial market is trying to get the wealth. The economists are trying to redistribute it to stabilize society.
Right.
And the wise individual is the one that has the balance of those two and knows they want to accumulate wealth, making a difference in as many people as possible. So everybody is moving up the scale of evolution at the same time, getting to do what they love doing in their own state of self-worth at that time.
Do you think of money as like energy in that sense? Because the way you're talking about it sounds like that. Whereas a lot of people who don't understand money don't think of it that way.
It is a form of energy because, as Einstein's saying, energy equals plus or minus mc squared plus another factor. So it is interconvertible from a material form to another form. It starts out theoretically being some sort of currency in the form of, rocks or pebbles or shells or something, and eventually it becomes, cattle. I guess that's where we got the bull market, right? Capita.
Right.
Capital.
Capita.
And then you eventually go to something that is more like coins, and then it goes to paper, then it goes to plastic, and then it goes to electronics, and now it goes to photonics, and now it's going into entanglement. That's the next stage of money, where it's purely manifested instantaneously through a quantum entangled connection. And so there's an evolution to it, from the most gross to the most subtle, from the most concrete to the most abstract, from that which is cumbersome and slow to that which is efficient. And we're moving by Maupertuis's law to the most efficient system of expression. And so money is a means of transactional fair exchange that are sustainable, and we accumulate money to the degree that we master true fairness and equity. If we're exaggerating ourselves with pride, we don't listen to our customers or employees, we eventually get backlash, and it humbles us. If we're minimizing ourselves, we sacrifice our profits and pay too much and have chaos. But if we find that balance and have an equanimity within ourselves, neither proud nor shame, but true to ourselves, and equity between ourselves with a reflective awareness of self and other, we have the most sustainable economics, the most sustainable socioeconomics, the most sustainable physiology. Every area of our life is mastered in that one state. And that's the very spiritual calling that we have, the equanimity, but it's also material mastery.
A lot of people think money's bad and money's dirty and money's evil, but based on your explanation, it's not. Money is something
it's a perfect expression. That's why I was saying transcending the moralities of money. The fastest way to disempower people is to project onto people an idealism that's incapable of being lived, creating a hypocrisy of disempowerment. And so the money circulates through the economy from those who have the least power to those most, those who have the least value on it to those who have the most, just like people do that. And so it ends up in the hands who project the values, and that's the way they keep, in a sense, the money circulating back to them. But the wise individual empowers themselves by caring enough about another individual to find out what their needs are and find a fair exchange with it. I had a young boy that was in South Africa, and he attended a program that I did at the Westin Hotel Arbella at the Cape Town waterfront. There's about maybe 800 people there. He's way in the back. I didn't get to meet him that night, but he was there. And I did a presentation on personal perspectives on your own relationship to money. And then I came back, that was September, and I came back in December, and he comes back to the program I did. And this time he comes up to me and he waits through all the pictures and signing of books and stuff at the end. And he comes up to me and he stands there. He's the last person. He's 14 years old. And he says, Dr. Demartini, and he handshakes me and says, "You inspired me." And I said, "How? How so?" He says, "I came here in September and you inspired me to start to save money and start to think differently." And I said, "Great." He says, "Dr. Demartini, I come from a family. I have 9 brothers and sisters. I'm the oldest. I'm 14. My mother and father have died of AIDS, and I run the family, and I'm responsible for everyone. And I live in a little shack in Kailicha, and it's got little plastic on top of it. It leaks when it rains. We don't have any water or electricity, but we're close by the water in the latrine." And he says, "But you told me that it's not what happens to me on the outside, it's what I decide to do with it. I have control over my perception, decisions, and actions, and I can take whatever happens to me and turn it into opportunity." Well, I started doing something different. I work in a little brick factory, and I stack mud bricks, and I get 60 cents a day. And I took 15 cents of that, and I paid a woman to take care of the brothers and sisters, but I started saving 15 cents a day. And I've saved $7.50, equivalent of US dollars, since I was here in September. And my goal is to have $30 saved by next year. And I'm gonna then buy a $200 house for my family that has a real ceiling and a real light bulb, and it's got water in it. And I just want to thank you for that. And I want to inspire another 1,000 kids to do the same, to know that they can do it, because they're dying and they're not knowing they can do that. So thank you for doing that. And when I thought about that, I actually went to see this house. I met him and I went to see it. I was in tears. I told him, I said, "You inspired me. I didn't inspire you, because you just did what most people never thought they could do. And you showed what was possible. So it's not what happens to you. It's not what you've been through, not what you're going through. It's what you decide to do with what it is. You can be victim of history or master of destiny by the way you perceive, decide, and act."
That's super powerful. And it's interesting how you just broke that down, because I teach students and I find they're on one side of the continuum. I had one student that felt bad about charging his clients for money and set up a charity and ended up becoming broke and got divorced on the back of it. And once I was like, if you provide a fair service and you charge people for that, you take that, you invest it and help more people, then you can realize everything you wanted. And he was like breaking down in tears, because for most of his life, he felt guilty about that profit.
Yeah.
I've also had students that just want to take all the money and give it to themselves and give a poor customer experience. And then they go, their business goes wrong. And I'm like, what are you doing? Unless you're providing the value to others, there's no way they're going to come back and continue.
Neither one of those are sustainable.
Right.
Narcissism or altruism by themselves are incomplete.
But the money's a beautiful feedback loop. It shouldn't be looked at as something bad, something evil, something dirty, anything like that.
No, it isn't.
It's a way of making the markets efficient.
It's exactly what it is. It's forcing people to be authentic and learn how to be true to themselves and fair in exchange with other people, because that's where you get rewarded.
Yeah, it's funny. Bill and Melinda Gates have created a great foundation, and they run it a lot like a company. And I think what makes them exceptional is because traditionally charities weren't run like a company, and they weren't run efficiently, like you said, like a corporation is. And I think a lot of times there was waste, there was unaccountability and all that stuff, and people were like, what are we doing here with this charity? And that's a great example of something that's not maybe, say, subject to those
just
markets.
did another article onto Jet Set magazine about philanthropy.
Okay.
And talking about how actually many of the philanthropic organizations are not actually as efficient as people imagine. They have these kind of ideals about what it's going to do, but they find out sometimes 85% of the money goes to a telemarketing company. So you don't find out that the money actually goes where you think. So I always say, if you're going to be philanthropic, don't rob people of dignity, accountability, responsibility, or productivity. Follow through on every dollar and find out where it actually goes and what it actually accomplishes, and look at the result.
I think it was Andrew Carnegie that's had that phrase, financial motive must prevail. And one of my mentors always says that, and everyone thinks it's because he just wants to be rich. But I just think it ultimately says that the humans ultimately want to be involved in something that's sustainable, that obviously provides value, et cetera. And I think that's what that means.
The study of axiology, which is a study of value and worth, which led to moralities and also economics. They come from the same thing. Goods and services are in both languages. If we look at the economics of that, look at it. Malford Marshall said that every movement of any body, of any human being, is measurable economically. I did this yesterday for fun. I said, how many of you smoke here? And only one person put their hand up in the whole room, which is pretty impressive. And I said, so you don't smoke? And said, and how many of you don't smoke, right? All the rest of you. I said, if I gave you $1 to smoke a cigarette, would you do it? They go, no. If I gave you $5, would you smoke a cigarette? I go, no. $10, no. $50, no. $100, $1,000. I kept going up to find out where their level of incentive would go. And when it hit about $1 million, somebody said, I'd smoke a cigarette for $1 million. And then some would go, no, I'd do it for 10 million. Some would do it, if you gave me $1 billion, I'd smoke a pack. And then I went to the guy that did smoke, and I did it in reverse. And I said, if I gave you $10 to not smoke a cigarette for the day, would you do it? He goes, no. But I found out his price to not smoke. And so Marshall was saying that every movement is that way. And I had a lady that said, well, I disagree with you. I said, well, you couldn't tell me that there's a value on my children. You couldn't tell me I'd give up my children for the amount. And I said, yeah, I can. As long as if I came up to your child and I said, I'd like to take your child and teach your child how to love you and appreciate you, no matter what. Could I borrow your child for one day to train your child on how to appreciate you? Could I have them for a day? He goes, yes. And I'll pay you $1,000 for the day. They go, okay. If I could train your child on how to empower all 7 areas of their life, right? Because if we don't empower our life, if we don't empower ourselves intellectually, we'll be told what to think. If we don't empower ourselves in business, we'll be told what to do. Don't empower ourselves in finance, we'll be told what we're worth. Don't empower ourselves in relationship, we'll be trapped. If we don't empower ourselves in society, we'll be probably told propaganda that's unreal. If we don't empower ourselves physically, we'll be told what drugs to take and what organs to remove. If we don't empower ourselves spiritually, we'll be probably caught in some dogma that's antiquated. So I said, if I was to take your son and I was to show your son how to be empowered in all 7 areas, and I got a whole week with him to train him how to do that and gave him an advantage they wouldn't do, and I gave you $10,000, could I have your son for a week? They go, yeah. And I kept adding more value in their values. And I got a woman to actually go, if you could give my child a better opportunity to get a greater life than what I can offer, then I'd give up my child. And I said, it's all about value. And if you'd thought that I could do a greater job at doing what you were hoping for your child, you as an act of love would say, please go here because it will give a greater advantage because I love my child.
So there's economics built in.
There's economics. Socioeconomics, as Prechter and others have described, are literally measurements of human motive. And that's why you can determine on negotiations what that is. And if you stack up the benefits and communicate those effectively, the feature, the advantage, the utility, the service, the productivity to somebody else and stack it up and present it in a beautiful way, the fees go up. That's the way you present it. And if you meet their needs and you meet more needs, then you'll get paid more. It's that simple.
And the money is just to quantify that.
It's a quantifiable measurement of how effective you are at caring enough about a human being. I said at a church one time, which didn't go over well at first, and I didn't ask me back to speak. I said, if you're poor, you're probably not caring about humanity. Because if you're caring about humanity, you're finding out what people are needing and going out of your way to find a fair exchange to help them get that and do that in an incentive for you to continue to do that. So if you don't get anything in return, you'll burn out and say that's not working. But if you do something that's fair, you'll continue to want to do that and continue to grow that as you become more effective and efficient.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.